The government's controversial investigatory powers bill will become law in the next few weeks. The so-called Snoopers Charter was passed by the House of Lords earlier today. Well, spy agencies will now be given the very same powers that were ruled unlawful just last month. They include the bulk collection of data exposed by whistleblower Edward Snowden. The bill has seen various amendments in the last 10 years, and the government argues it has significantly watered down the powers given to the security agencies. So what will they now be able to do? Well, the law will force internet and phone companies to store records of websites and calls for a year. And as mentioned earlier, the bulk collection of personal data will become legal. It will also enable police and other security services to hack computers and phones, only with approval from the Home Secretary. Very little of this has made it into the mainstream media at the moment, but social media has been abuzz with the reaction. And Adrian Kennard is director of internet service provider Andrews and Arnold. He joins me live now. Adrian, good evening. What's your reaction then to the bill that's been passed by the House of Lords?
Guys, I've got no audio. I've got nothing.
Adrian, can you hear me now? We just made contact with you just a few seconds ago. Sadly, we can't talk to Adrian just for the moment. Okay. All right, we'll try and get back to Adrian in just a few minutes from now. That's Adrian Kennard there. Apologies for that. We'll try again a little later in the programme. Well, we can now return to one of the top stories. And the House of Lords has passed a controversial investigatory powers bill dubbed by critics as the Snoopers Charter. It'll give security agencies unprecedented powers to spy on the public. Adrian Kennard is director of internet service provider Andrews and Arnold. I tried to speak to him just a few seconds ago, and now we can indeed talk to each other. Adrian, evening to you. What is your reaction to the bill now being passed by the Lords?
It's a bit scary, really. It's making us one of the sort of biggest police states in any democratic country around the world now. And it's not just the spy agencies like GCHQ that have all of these powers. And of course, somewhat scary with the way things are going in the States and the way the NSA and GCHQ work together. Some of these powers might end up being available to Mr. Trump. But doesn't it bring the legislation in line with current technology? After all, the previous laws didn't really take into account the use of smartphones and other devices. Well, yes and no. There's two different aspects. There's the spy agencies and the targeted surveillance, which a lot of people are fairly happy that if you've got a suspect in a crime, you should be able to do what was phone tapping on the internet. But the bigger issue is all this retention and collection of data that was never collected before. It's like collecting details of every book you read. This is about collecting every website you visit. It's much more intrusive. And every bulk power in this bill is aimed at the majority of people who are not suspected of a crime. And it's passing on, clearly, a lot of work to you, being a service provider. How does storing all this data actually affect your work? Ironically, if they've got any sense, which is a question, they would go after the backhaul carriers like BT, TalkTalk, Virgin and the mobile operators. In practice, it's unlikely they'd go after us directly. They'd collect the data behind the scenes before it gets to us. That's what we'd expect. But even so, it's a lot of money, it's an expensive process and has a big opportunity to break the way things work. And also, for people to break into it, Adrian, is this data going to be safe? We've seen even the last few days where websites that have personal information are again hacked and all this data leaked. This amount of data is unprecedented. This is not just which porn sites you might like. This is every website you visit, recorded for every citizen in the country if they have their way, and the IP Act allows them to do that and collect that data and trawl through it without even a warrant. We are living, of course, in the days of terror threats, and of course we've got to recognise the fact that security agencies have been collecting data for decades. Isn't it better that the spy agencies get all the help they need, they can now do it legally, and will at least be accountable for their actions, and indeed to keep us safe? Well, no, the bills, as I say, there's two parts. What the spy agencies are doing is very much aimed at trying to catch terrorists and things. It's not a huge issue compared with lots of other crimes. The much bigger issue is where all this data can be used on collecting information on innocent people and made available to the police or the local council or something like this. There's so much data, it's so vulnerable to attack, it's so valuable to criminals to collect all this. And it's so easy for criminals to get round this as well. It's not a sensible approach. Adrian, good to get your immediate reaction to this development there in the House of Lords. Thank you very much indeed. Adrian Kennard. No problem.